Hi, everyone. I wanted to share some Torah with you as we enter into Yom Kippur. Some of the Torah that I listen to every week comes in the form of podcasts, sometimes Jewish, sometimes not. And one of them is This American Life, a classic. I hope you already listen, and if not, I highly recommend it because each week you get different stories from people's lives. And often they uncover a hidden part of something that you thought you knew about, but that you didn't know the full story. So, one of these that really made me think was a story from the fall of 2020. And it was about two researchers who were doing vaccine research way back in 2014. Their names were Nyanshuang Wang and Jason McClellan. And they were working on a vaccine for MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. MERS was a different kind of coronavirus. So you've seen that signature ball with all the spikes on it. MERS had the same shape. And what they were trying to do was inject something into the body that would cause cells to manufacture the spikes that were harmless. And that way the body would recognize the spikes and would fight off the virus when it was the real thing, should that happen. And it turns out that this research was very complicated and hard to get right. And it took them months of trying and failing and trying and failing to finally come up with the right way to get the body to create these spikes. Interestingly, at the time, they didn't have their research published. It turns out that no one was very interested in what they had discovered. Their assumption was that the next pandemic would be some form of influenza. They didn't see another coronavirus coming. Of course, we know how things turned out. So years later, COVID-19 breaks out in China. Jason gets a call from a colleague at the Vaccine Research Center at NIH who was familiar with his research. And Jason reaches out to Wang and they get to work. And in this case, this is slightly different because it's using mRNA to teach the body to make the spikes and to learn to fight them off. But what they say in this story is that as soon as the Chinese researchers released the genetic code for the virus, they were able to apply what they had done with MERS to this genetic code, and they were able to figure out the basis of what they needed for the vaccine in 10 minutes. So they, of course, then sent this along to Moderna, and what happens next with the vaccine. But what I find so amazing about this, besides just being so grateful to them for their research, what's amazing is that one of the avenues out of this global crisis was created before the crisis itself had begun. They had no idea at the time how important their work would be. And in fact, there were some negative views about their work, but it turns out that their work was critical. There's a Jewish teaching that is similar to this. It's found in our Midrash, and it teaches that God creates a cure before the affliction. That before we know what the problem is, there already exists a solution. The example given in Midrash is of the story of Purim. If you remember, Mordecai, the beginning, foils a plot to assassinate the king. And this is before the decree to destroy the Jewish people. And then one night, the king can't sleep, and somebody reads him the royal history, and he finds out about Mordecai's aid. And this turn of events is what begins the downfall of Haman and the reversal of the plot. And so the Talmud teaches that the solution, Mordecai's actions, which then allow the story to completely change, that had taken place before the problem. The cure was made before the affliction. Elsewhere in Midrash, we learn that God created several things before God created the world. And one of these creations was teshuvah, repentance, which we know all about at this time of year. So before God creates the land and the sea and the flowers and the birds and us, with all of our merits and with all of our failings, God created the teshuvah. According to the story, God was working out all the plans for the world and kept trying to create it, and it just kept falling apart. It wouldn't work. And then when God creates teshuvah, then the next world that God creates was able to flourish. So before God creates the affliction, God creates a cure. When God created us with free will, it was known and expected that we would mess up, that we would give in to our worst impulses and lose sight of our ability to choose life and blessing as we're commanded to do. But God doesn't leave us hanging. God doesn't leave us to be destroyed. Embedded in creation of the world is the process for sustaining the world. So my blessing for us during this season of repentance and as we enter into Yom Kippur is that we accept into our lives this gift that we have, this mechanism for change that is a natural part of our world. Because God creates the cure before the affliction, and teshuvah is our cure. May we learn to see all that God has set before us. May we know that everything we need, we have already. And may we trust that no matter who we are and what we have done, we are capable of change. May you have a meaningful Yom Kippur. Thank you.